Let her, I just texted her
Okay.
already, so just 1 second. We're just on a delay. She said
What did you
Okay,
say?
just let me know when you're good.
I think we're good.
Okay, before we do this, I'd like the council to indulge me for a moment, and if you would, I'd like to have Mr. Stephen Sims come and assume that chair right there. If the council's okay with that, just for this work session, in light of what's going to happen after the work session. So is the council okay with that?
Sure. Yes.
Come on up, Stephen. You bet. With that, we will call the work session to order.
And then our city attorney, Ross Williamson, is here, and he's here to go over some just information for you, but also give some of you an opportunity to meet with him and ask him questions as well. So we'll just let him take it from here.
Thanks, Ross.
Good evening. This is way too formal for a work session for me, sorry. So I don't like being constrained by a desk and a microphone, but I will do my best. So I have an hour's worth, or maybe a little bit more, but I will keep it to an hour's worth of a training for you all. And I think it's great that we have a new counselor, so it's good for that too. Welcome aboard. But we can do this however you want. So I have about an hour's worth of material, and we can cut that short if we get into questions. So I'm happy to do that however you want. But I guess I will start with an introduction. My name is Ross Williamson. I work at the Local Government Law Group in Eugene, and we serve as legal counsel for the city and have for, I forgot again to look to see when we started, but five years ago about. And my firm is in Eugene, and I have 7 other colleagues, so we're 8 lawyers, and all we do is represent small government. So we represent over 20 cities as general counsel. We represent 1 county, and then we represent probably about 80 or so special districts, which are mostly fire districts all over the state. And so all my work is related to local government law, and I've been doing it now for over 20 years. And my family now knows, and has known for quite a while, that they can't ask me any legal questions that would be helpful for them, because I don't know anything about estate planning. I don't know anything about criminal defense, DUIs, so yeah, I'm useless to my family. But I feel like I'm pretty well grounded in local government law because this is all I do. So all the training that I do and all the training that my colleagues do at the office has to do with local government law. We work very closely with LOC and CIS, your insurance carrier. So we have good relationships with your pre-loss legal team at CIS and the general counsel at LOC. And so I think we are a pretty good resource for cities your size. And a lot of folks ask, well, how come you're not in-house? How come a city doesn't have an in-house city attorney? Well, sometimes you just don't have the work. So smaller cities just don't have the work to satisfy or fill up 1 full FTE in-house. And so we provide that service to smaller cities. So I think probably the biggest city that we have, we cross the 10,000 barrier, 10,000 population. So like Independence is probably one of the bigger cities we have, and Cottage Grove is right around 10,000. But they're all right around your size and then smaller. So we represent a couple of very small cities, like West Fir, which has got under 200 people. So the whole gamut. So that's me. And I don't know if you want to ask me any questions about my practice or anything like that, or we just want to dive right into it. And this is intended to be kind of hopefully a refresher for a lot of you folks, because I know several of you have been doing this for quite a while, and you go to the LOC trainings, and so this builds upon that. But because I'm only here in Stayton with you all, I'm able to tailor it a little bit to what you all have going on. So my presentation looks specifically at your charter and your relationship with your city manager and your relationship with me. And so we talk about that. And so this training is kind of my city councilor roles and responsibilities training. And then we look, in this training particularly, I decided to talk a little bit about land use because that is something that you get into every once in a while, but maybe not a lot. And so I describe in here a little bit about your role in the land use process. And I'm happy to take questions at any time, so interrupt. I'll get on a roll. I'm an attorney. I can talk for as long as you let me.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty, if I may. Yeah, Ross, thank you so much for being available to us. I've been on the council now for over 4 years, so this question's kind of coming from that time. So you mentioned that you represent about 20 cities, your firm does. I'm curious, in the scope of any of those contracts, does that include in-person attendance to council meetings and other sessions, special sessions, work sessions, that kind of thing?
Sure. All of our clients are on an as-needed basis. So we are not regular attendees for any of our clients. There are a couple of clients who are, I think maybe Cottage Grove comes to mind, where they're just close to our office, and so it's easier for them to say, hey, we might need an attorney tonight, and so we'll show up at their general city council meeting. But they are definitely the exception to the norm, and it's just as needed. I think that's a very common question that we get, especially maybe when we're interviewing for new work. And my general kind of pat response is that we're really good at talking you out of having us there at every meeting because of our relationship that helps our relationship with your staff. And so I think my job is to help prepare your staff for your council meetings so they fully understand the legal issues. They can run by agenda topics by us beforehand, and so that they're fully prepared to work with you all on that agenda topic. And I will also say, in a live public meeting like this is not generally the best time to provide legal advice on the fly. So if I'm at a meeting and I wasn't prepared for a particular question, or I'm there for one agenda item, but I'm hanging out for the rest, and a question comes up, my answer generally is, I'll get back to you. That's just the nature of what I provide, unless it's a fairly basic question or one that I've seen before.
And then following on that, what about like electronic attendance? Do you do that on a regular basis for any of your clients?
I think my answer was attendance in general. So yeah, we do on as needed basis for that as well. But we have no client that is every meeting or regular.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Good question.
Mr. Mayor, so as needed, so I guess who is determining kind of when it's needed?
Good question. Generally, it would be when the agenda is being developed. So that's your city manager and your mayor are working together on preparing the agenda. And if they know that there's something coming up, then they will either work with me beforehand or identify, hey, this is going to be, I know there are going to be questions. I know this is going to be a difficult issue. We could use some legal guidance on, so we would want you there.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. I think that would be my interpretation of that as well. And in fact, we had Ross sort of on standby when we were talking about the teen center lease or the teen center extension. And after talking with him, I'm like, I think we're not in. We don't need the legal opinion yet, especially after the conversation with him. So we didn't need him to be there, but he was ready to be there because if it kind of went in that direction. And then also, that's why I encourage you guys to let me know if you have questions beforehand, if there's things that you're wondering about or want me to check with him about. That gives me an opportunity to do that and/or have him attend the meeting.
I guess I'm not trying to hide from you all. I actually really enjoy getting out of the office and meeting with folks. I just realized that I understand that I'm expensive, and so it is a cost to have me here in person. And I've also just through my experience, I found if we're able to nip those agenda items before the meeting, get those studied up and get your staff fully prepared to answer the questions, then that really helps the meeting flow better anyway.
And I'm curious, just being fairly new here, it sounds as though there hasn't been a lot of interaction between council and our city attorney, and I think it might be a good idea to just plan on a quarterly meet and greet type of thing where, so that, even if we're not necessarily needing him at regular council meetings, having an opportunity to just sort of have a hot wash type of thing of things that maybe have happened or things that are coming up, that might be a good way to move that forward. Just a thought.
Councilor.
Ms. Mayor?
Yeah.
Ross, I think there has been some past frustration, and that might be what you are, the questions that you're getting right now, because there have been meetings where we've had questions and then the answer is, well, I'm not an attorney, or that would be a question for the attorney, and then there hasn't been follow-up, and then there's been requests. We'd like to have you here for this discussion or to go over it, and there seems to be some gatekeeping happening even after multiple requests. And so how does the council have access to you? Because there's questions that we have sometimes and we want to be able to ask you directly, or what is the protocol, or how does the council, I feel like, because most of us were new, didn't really even know the steps or the protocol, and it was just shot down. And so it became a very frustrating situation. So moving forward, knowing what the expectations are and how to follow up with things would be helpful.
Good question.
Great question.
So again, I'm not trying to hide from you. I'm happy to provide as much service as you need. I do understand your budget constraints, and so I try to do my advice as expeditiously and prudently as possible. So I don't know. So you have council rules. I know you have council rules, and I don't know if meeting with or addressing the city attorney is addressed in those council rules. Generally, it is, and so that would be my first place to look. But I think you have a new administration now, and I have a good working relationship with your administrator, and I believe that if you have expressed questions, you ask questions of your administrator and say, hey, I think we need a legal opinion on this, I think she can work with me and we can get that done. I don't want to point fingers or anything like that, but there was some reluctance in the past to using our services. I did sense that.
Yeah, Councilor, you bring up a great question. Ross, yeah, I think she used the word gatekeeper, and that's a fair statement, a fair word. I think my point of clarification would be, over the time that I've been on the council, I always understood it that the city attorney represented council first, staff second. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's the way I understood it initially.
I think I would find my client is the city.
Okay.
And so I to the extent you all as working as a governing body, right. I can certainly work within those framework and provide answers. your charter gives your city manager a lot of authority to operate the daily functions and the daily operations of the city. And so that's where a lot of the legal work comes from, is just
Sure.
the daily operations. You know, we've got a code enforcement action, we've got a park issue, we've got a contract to work through. And so just naturally, a lot of my work flows and works with staff. But if a majority of the council has a question that they want to spend money on to get a legal answer, that's absolutely appropriate, and I can certainly provide that service.
Here's the city attorney on. Yeah, thanks for that, Ross. I think, just from a historical perspective, again, that's the way it was explained to me probably a decade ago. So yes, it's evolved over that time, obviously, for obvious reasons. So I would ask the council to look at that when we look at the council rules again, and if you're comfortable with what's in there, it needs to be modified, we can do that on our session in March.
Yeah, these are your rules, so you can make changes, absolutely. And I've guided councils through that process, and the league has a model council rule packet on the league website, and there are examples from a lot of cities. So if you don't like what you're reading, we can work with that.
Mr. Mayor.
Ben, go ahead.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I could remember something about the council rules giving the mayor and the council president, I believe, authority to contact Ross directly.
Yeah.
That was kind of the
don't-
rule. It was,
Yeah, I don't see it spelled out there, but it
I
does
remember
have
hearing
a,
something about that. I don't remember exactly.
I think you're, I recall that somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does, there is a stipulation in here about contacting the council, the attorney once a month, no more than once a month. So I think we need to look at this again.
Yeah, you're only allowed one legal issue a
Well,
month, I guess.
Yeah, and to me, when I'm just looking at this again, and that seems like maybe there was some issues in the past that
There was.
that caused a little bit of reining in. But it is a different administration, and I think that I was mentioning to Councilor Giglio today, my job is to serve you and the community at large. And if you need information from the city attorney to do that, then we'll make that happen. And I think that's his job, is to serve you and the city and the community at large. Well, I guess the city, as that works. And so I think we'll make sure that that happens moving forward. I think definitely we need to look at the language a little bit, because this does seem a little like twice per month for 2 hours. Obviously, if there's a big issue, we need to make sure that we're able to address that, or you are able to address that. But hopefully, it's a different situation.
Yeah, yep.
And to put a bow on that conversation, Councilor McDonald, you may have heard that from me, because, that's actually in part of my presentation, is the authority of the council and then versus the authority of the individual councilor. And there's a special relationship that the council has with its one employee, and that's your city manager. And so I have to be able to work with someone on the council in terms of personnel issues. And just by practice, that's generally the mayor. And so if there's an emergency, a personnel issue that can't be resolved before the next meeting, or we can't get you all together to hold a meeting to resolve it, and the mayor needs to start that conversation, start getting advice on a personnel matter, then absolutely the mayor has the authority to talk to me. And if I get a call from anyone on the council, that's generally my first question to an individual on any council is, do you have the authority to be talking to me? Because, again, I understand that I cost money, and there's only so much authority that you have as an individual to cost the city some money. But it seems like, from what I'm hearing, your current council rules are a little rigid from my experience, and probably too much so. And so maybe the pendulum needs to swing back the other way a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Ross.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I just think, in general, I think it's just, I think I would also be in favor of revising the rules as well, just to provide as much clarity as we can. I think that's really the issue, is really in a situation, what do you do, right? Like just really providing as much guidance for each of the counselors, and specifically when there's a matter, like what, even if it's not like they're able to directly speak to you, to then just provide a really clear guidelines of what are the steps that need to be taken. Because I just think more and more clarity will help prevent past miscommunications.
Anybody else? Thanks.
All right, we can roll into the presentation a little bit, and I'm going to cut out some of it, obviously. But actually, the first few slides are actually, it's a great segue into what we're actually talking about. So my first slide there on the first page is titled Council Authority, and we look for your authority. We always start with the city charter. So the city charter is the constitution of the city of Stayton, and that's was adopted by the voters of Stayton, and it sets out all the authority for our government. It sets out how we're going to be governed, who's going to govern us, and what authority they have. And so we look at City Charter Section 7. It says the power of the city vests in the council, except where the charter provides otherwise. And, as an attorney, words have a lot of meaning for me, and it says in the council, which means the body, not any individual. The charter then explains that a little bit more in Section 8 by saying the council consists of 5 councilors. So the city charter defines who has the power, and it defines what body has the power, and it's the 5 of you, the 5 councilors on this city council. And a little bit unique with Stayton is that our mayor actually is not a member of the council. And so Section 9 says the mayor is not a member of our council, and so our governing body really is 5 city councilors. So the mayor is just a figurehead, with a gavel.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Ort, go ahead.
No disrespect to Ted.
Sorry. Ross, so we have a different, talking with other cities and whatnot, we have, the way that our council is structured without the mayor being part of the council. What are the, do you know the history of that, or the pros and cons of why we have it structured this way? I'm just curious.
So I think that Stayton is the only city that we work with this current structure. We have several cities where the mayor is a member of the council, but a non-voting member. So it's very similar to what you have. Whether the mayor is a member of the council or not is mostly just a quorum question, whether we count the mayor as part of a quorum. But several cities have the mayor as just a tiebreaker. So that's similar to what we have here. So if there's a tie vote, then the mayor can break the tie. So that's a little bit more common. But I think the most common is that the mayor is just a full member of the council and gets to vote on anything. And so the mayor can make a motion and the mayor can vote on anything. And so I would say that's the most common. Why is Stayton this way? I don't know, other than you have, it's just been passed down. I think that's just the way it's been. And when when the charter was last updated, that was not changed. So the League of Oregon Cities has a model charter, and this would be outside of the model charter, your current form.
There you go.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
So just on that, so because he's defined outside of the council, you're saying that he doesn't count towards the quorum?
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you need 3 councilors to create a quorum. So the mayor and two is not a meeting. It's just a gathering of 3 people. So my next slide is another council authority slide, and it's got 2 bullets. And this is my slide where you have 2 questions if the council wants to take action. And I break it down just to 2. The first question is, do we have the authority? Do we as a council have the authority to take an action? And then the second question is, do we as a body want to take an action? And so first question is authority, and the second question is, are there 3 of us who agree on it? And I use this to illustrate a little bit maybe that sometimes a constituent issue or a community issue is not a city problem. And sometimes the answer to a well-meaning community member, someone who comes up in public comment is, I hear your problem, but that's not a city problem. It could be a fire district problem. It could be a county problem. It could be a state problem. It could even be a federal problem, but just not everything is a city problem. We can help them find an answer, but sometimes it's just not for you to decide. And then even if you individually think, wow, that's a great issue, that is a city problem, we've got state law that says it's a city issue, it's really only a city issue if you get 2 friends on your council to agree with you. So this is also a teamwork slide. Council involves teamwork and convincing 2 colleagues that what you're proposing is the right thing for the city to do. So can we do it, and do we want to do it? Those are the 2 questions. And then also dovetailing with the conversation we've had is the next slide, which is my, back in the day when I had a PowerPoint, some crickets would be playing right now, and it's illustrating what individual authority do you have, and it's none unless you've been given some. And so the city charter talks about the authority of the council, the governing body is able to do all these things. The charter, except for a few things that the mayor is obligated to do, the charter gives no power to an individual city councilor. And so you have to be a team player. You have to get 2 colleagues on your side to get anything done.
Yes, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So basically, these are determined based on the structure of the charter, correct? So currently, the powers that are designated to the mayor are what is kind of listed here. But if the council was to choose to vest more authority through a charter review and updating the charter, is that allowed? I mean, within parameters, obviously.
Yeah, so you're skipping ahead. So we can go to the next slide.
Dang it, come on.
No. I'm just,
No,
I'm just joking.
impatience. I'm impatient. That's on me.
No, I'm just kidding. This is a work session. We can joke. Yes. So the city charter is only changed by the voters. So it would have to go to a vote, and the voters of the city of Stayton would have to agree to updates. But you can certainly propose that. So that's generally the process of how it goes. As a charter is updated over time, often the usual process is a charter review committee gets together, or maybe the council does it on their own, and they see some weaknesses in the charter, they see some areas for change, they review the model charter from the league, and they say, well, that's a great idea, how come we don't have that? And you put together a package, a charter amendment package, and then you put that on the ballot. And so absolutely, the mayor's authority that we have here on this next slide that are basically, he gets to run the meetings, he gets to make some committee appointments, and he gets to sign. And so you all, as a city council, can hear that confidential information, but you can only share it if you all agree to share it. So no individual person has the authority to share confidential information that you receive as a city councilor, unless you as a body decide to share it. So that's just a good reminder. So when we're in an executive session talking about litigation or something like that, and I'm laying out the city's defense of a lawsuit, that's got to stay with you because you as an individual don't have the authority to share that. My next slide is where we break out a little bit, and so now we talked about what the council is, what the council authority is, and now we're going to talk a little bit about councilor roles. And this is my slide that I call my hat slide. What hat are you wearing? Because as a councilor, you can wear many different hats, and as a mayor, you can wear many different hats. And so sometimes you are delegated authority. So maybe you all, this is, I can't even read this, I need my glasses. Slide number 6, I believe. So maybe the Marion County has a committee, and there's liaisons from all the different cities in Marion County. And so one of you has been delegated the responsibility to attend that committee meeting and report back to the council. And so that's a delegation to you as an individual to then go to that meeting and represent the city. But that only goes so far. Unless you're actually delegated to some authority to state a position or vote on behalf of the city, maybe sign an MOU, unless you're actually given that authority by this body, you don't have that authority. And so you can go to that committee meeting and you can listen, you can take notes, but then you have to bring it back and report on it to this body. And I have a distinction there, clear delegation versus assumed delegation. And that is just because I used to be a litigator. I used to litigate, I used to defend lawsuits. I worked for the city of Eugene in a lot of police misconduct cases because they had a lot of those back in the day. And so I came up as a baby lawyer doing litigation. And one of the things we learn is that if it's not written down, it didn't exist. So if it's not in evidence, then it's really going to be hard to prove. And so if you are a city councilor and you are out in the world exercising delegated authority, it is best for you if it's a clear delegation. If there was a motion by this body or some clear delegation, maybe a resolution or maybe it was in an ordinance, a motion for you to go onto that county-wide committee and act on behalf of the city. You want that a clear delegation. An assumed delegation is still a thing, but it's just, it's not, maybe it wasn't a motion, it was just, there was, the mayor said, hey, can you go attend that meeting and report back? Well, yeah, you've been delegated that authority to go to that meeting, but the body, there's no record of it. It's just the mayor saying, hey, can you go report back? That's still a delegation, but it's not what I as a litigator would want. So if you're thinking about your own liabilities, it's best for you to have a clear delegation. And so when you're at that meeting, you can be wearing different hats. So you're at a county meeting with all these other city representatives, and you've been delegated that responsibility by this body, and maybe even this body has said, go to that meeting and offer up $1,000 to help with the project. They've given you that authority, and so you have your $1,000 hat. So now you're at that committee meeting, and you can say, on behalf of the city of Stayton, I'm authorized to provide $1,000 for this project. And so you can say, I'm wearing my city councilor hat, I'm wearing my delegated authority hat, and you all here in this audience know that I have been delegated that authority. But then maybe there's a discussion back and forth, and there's talk about, well, maybe we should get more money, or maybe we need to scrap the project altogether. And then you can take off that city delegation hat and say, well, now I'm speaking as an individual city councilor in my individual capacity, and this is what I would favor. This is what I think. I'm not speaking on behalf of the city here. but I think X, Y, and Z. The important thing is not only for you to realize what hat you're wearing, but for your audience to understand what hat you're wearing. In fact, that's probably more important. If your audience is confused, then that's a problem, because they don't understand what authority you're speaking with, and they can be confused. Maybe you weren't very clear about how much monetary authority that this body gave you, and you say, well, I've got $1,000, but, we're willing to go up to $2,000. Well, I'm confused now. Do you have $2,000 in authority or $1,000 of authority? And so if your audience is confused, then that's a problem for you individually.
Ross, I got a question about
Yes.
that. So I'm finding myself doing that 2 times. So number one, I don't speak on behalf of the council, and I make that crystal clear. And the second portion is I don't speak on behalf of the city
Yeah.
in my role, correct?
Right.
Okay. So that presents a problem for me, just in a couple aspects. When we go to those mayor associations or whatever that is, and we're posed with that type of question, I got to make sure I revert to what the actual role is, right?
Yeah.
In the
And-
delegation.
Absolutely. And so I'm not trying to say you can't have your own opinions, and you can't speak those opinions. Absolutely you can. You have that right. I just want to make it for your own purposes, for your own liability, for your own protection, to make sure your audience understands. And it can be really easy. This comes up a lot, as you might guess, in letters to the editor. And so in your local newspaper, you as a city councilor can state your opinion on an issue, on an ongoing issue, and you have that right. 3 little words, 4 little words, 5 little words can make all the difference in that letter. If sometimes I'll get a copy of a letter and I'm like, Ross, this is outrageous. How can the city councilor say this? They weren't delegated any authority. And I look at the letter and I say, oh, well, it says here that they're speaking in their individual capacity. Yeah, everyone knows they're a city councilor. You were elected to that position. Everyone knows you as the mayor in town, so you can't do away with that identity. But you're allowed to speak in your individual capacity, and you can say, in my individual capacity, I think this policy stinks, and I'm going to do everything I can to undermine it in my individual capacity. And if you've said that, then my job is really easy. I'm like, well, I see no problem with that. And so it's really easy to clarify things for your audience. I do, and that goes with speaking with the media as well. I actually have a pretty good relationship with the media. I'm not afraid of the media. I think they provide a valuable service to our communities. I think they help with transparency. I think they help with getting the word out. They help with filling up the audience with people who care about what we're doing. So I have no problem with talking to the press. It's just really important to make sure they understand how they should quote you and how they should attribute your quotes. And I've found that 99% of the reporters out there will let you review that with them and will attribute it correctly. And so if you say, hey, I'm happy to give a quote, but you have to attribute it to me as an individual, not as a member of the council, or not as a city position, they will do that for you. You just need to be clear. The last bullet point is an anomaly. So when we're talking about union matters, so if I don't know when we're next in bargaining, but if once the city enters bargaining, you have a bargaining team who then meets on behalf of the city with a bargaining team on behalf of the union. And those two parties get together and they hash out a contract. And then that contract is then brought back to you for ratification and final approval. There is now case law in Oregon out of the city of Lebanon, sorry for them, that even if a city councilor is very clear about, I'm wearing my individual hat, I'm not on the negotiating team, I'm not speaking on behalf of the city, but our employees get paid too much, They should not have health insurance. They have a soft, cushy job, and I won't ratify any contract that comes before me. Well, that can be termed an unfair labor practice, because even though they're being very clear, just the way the statute has been interpreted, is that the union is entitled to view that city councilor as speaking for the city, even if they say they're not. So the rule of thumb, as soon as you enter negotiations, as soon as your city administrator says, hey, we're negotiating the new CBA for our staff, that's when you stop talking about union matters.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question about that. So going into that specific decision, was that for the individual counselor making those statements, or was that a group of counselors making those statements? Because to me, it sounds like that person wouldn't even have the decision-making authority to do that. So I guess I'm kind of confused.
Right. Good question. And that was the defense the city was putting forward, is that this city councilor is a rogue. One city councilor, no authority to make any decisions on their own, no authority to speak on behalf of the city, and in fact even said they don't have the authority to speak on behalf of the city. They were very clear that I'm just anti-union. I think we pay our employees too much, and I don't support the current negotiations. But the way the statute is drafted is that was a statement from the employer. Yeah. So that little shockwaves through the city attorney listserv on that one, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? So I worked in the federal service, and I'm looking at this clear delegation. So what is considered clear delegation? Because we had to archive all our emails in the federal service because they were legal documents. So if you had an order coming through email, that was a legal document. Is that the same in this specific situation, speaking for the city?
Yeah,
I mean, do I need a memorandum from the city manager or talking points from the mayor or an email saying, this is my authority?
Yeah, great question. And so you'll have a little bit of a learning curve going from the employee side to the policymaking side. And so as an individual city councilor, we start with the basic premise that you really don't have very much individual authority. Whereas as an employee, you have a job description, you have a boss who's telling you things to do, and so you actually do have a lot of authority to within the scope of your duties. And so that's kind of the difference here. And so when I talk about clear delegation, I'm mostly talking about evidence. What can demonstrate that you actually are wearing the correct hat. So if you are speaking on behalf of the city, where is that? What says that you can speak on behalf of the city? Yeah, and generally, for you as a city councilor, that's going to be a motion. That's going to be a motion from this body saying, okay, councilor, I want you to go out and testify to the legislature in support of House Bill 1111. And so you've got that motion from this body that says you have the authority to go to the state legislature in Salem and advocate on behalf of the city in favor of this particular legislation. That's an express delegation from this body in those words of the motion. And so that's the extent of your authority. And so when you go to the legislature, you need to stay within the confines of that motion. And if some representative asks you a question, you can say, well, now I'm speaking on my own. I'm taking off my city councilor hat, and now I'm speaking as an individual who cares about my community and who has an opinion. But this is not the opinion of the city. Does that help?
That's very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
All right.
Yeah, I was just going to do a time check. We've got about 10 more minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
So we are going to get through an example of council authority in the confines of you as an employer. I think that is, you have one employee, and it's set out in your city charter. City Charter Section 34 creates the position of city manager, and the charter says that the city manager is the administrative head of the city. And so she's in charge of the daily operations, the day-to-day ongoing operations of the city. She hires and fires everyone else in the city. You hire and fire the city administrator, the city manager. So you have one employee, and it's your job to then supervise that one employee. So it's a really important job. And just like she has to do everything as an employer for her staff, annual reviews, salary schedules, all of that falls on you as a body, the five of you together with the help of the mayor, to then supervise your one employee. And so you should be doing annual reviews. You should be doing check-ins. You should make sure she has a good working environment, and all of those things that are important for an employer is kind of, it's a tough role. You're not getting paid very much to do this job, and yet it's a really important part of your job is to be the supervisor of the CEO of the city. She is the CEO. She's in charge of the budget. She's in charge of all the staff, all the facilities, and yet you supervise her. And so that you have to take that really important, it's a very important job that you have to take seriously. But importantly, it's the council's job. It's not any individual. So if one of you is in the city manager's office every day at 3 o'clock, telling the city manager to do X, Y, and Z, that's not your job. You don't have the authority to do that. And we actually, we have some experience in Oregon where individual city councilors think they have more authority than they actually do, especially in this employer-employee relationship. There's a good example from our biggest city in Portland, where this is a while ago now, one of the city councilors was a very experienced firefighter, retired firefighter, got on the city council. But of course, once a firefighter, always a firefighter, still had a radio and would listen to calls. One night, there was a call that was pretty close to the house, and so I'll go down and check it out. And so the city councilor goes to the fire scene, notices that there's no command on site yet, thinks, I know how to attack this fire. And so this individual city councilor starts directing fire employees how to attack a fire. No authority to do that. You don't want to be in that position. So it's all well and good to do site visits, check out the treatment plant, check out City Hall, check out the pool, the library, and understand your role within the city government. But you're not there to give orders, and you're not there to direct staff. That is your employee's job. That is the city manager's job.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor. So this really just gets down to like just a point that I'm having a little trouble with. So how exactly if no individual counselor has the ability to have frank conversations with the manager, then how exactly, so are all those discussions or any discussions in terms of like the manager, supervising the manager, all those just need to be done collectively in a public hearing, and those are where those discussions are had? Any issues in terms of any concerns that are brought up, anything, all that needs to be done. Basically, that would be the setting for all those types of discussions then.
Yeah, so a little clarity. I have no problem with you having frank discussions with your manager.
Okay.
And in fact, I encourage it. I mean, you get to know your employee. And so have those, just don't dominate her time. Don't be the one that's always there. But yeah, and in fact, I think it's often a best practice to have what I call one-on-ones, maybe right before a city council meeting or maybe right after, where the manager gets together with each of you individually and says, how are things going? How am I doing? How am I doing my job? And gets that feedback from you individually. But if you want to direct the city manager on what to do, then that has to come from the body. And you do that through your goal setting or your policy making. You say, we as a body really think that policing our downtown is really important. And so that is our goal for this year, is to work on policing downtown. And so now your employee understands what the body thinks about that issue and will go out and do it. And then a year from now, you will do an evaluation and see, how'd you do on policing downtown?
Thank you. That's clarifying.
I think this next slide is a great place to wind up. It's the city and councilor liability slide. And this brings together everything that we've just been talking about. Why does it matter? And this is my slide that I say, stay in your lane. And in fact, I even go like this when I'm standing up. I usually like to stand up when I give these presentations. So stay in your lane. If you are staying in your lane, then you have insurance. If you are staying in your lane, then you don't have to worry about personal liability. So what does that mean conversely? That means if you are outside of your lane, if you're straying outside of your authority, then you may have to worry about liability. You may have to worry about insurance. And so you have a very good insurance. The city has very good insurance from City County Insurance, CIS. It provides insurance to all of you acting within the course and scope of your duties. And so if you are acting within the course and scope of your duties and something goes wrong, someone gets hurt, someone sues the city, you call me up and I say, no problem, I'm going to call insurance and we're going to get this covered. If you are doing something outside the scope of your duties, if you are out directing fire personnel on how to attack a fire, there is no insurance for that city councilor if something happens. If that fire blew up, if that someone got injured, and the cause is that city councilor giving directions to staff that they had no authority to give, there's no insurance for that. And that means that individual city councilor is hiring their own lawyer. You don't want to have to do that. That means that individual city councilor is paying the damages on their own. You don't want to do that. So staying in your lane, wearing the right hat, understanding and making sure your audience understands what hat you're wearing, this all goes to staying in your lane and being covered for insurance. And so I want this to be a really easy conversation between you and your insurance carrier that, yeah, you were doing your job, you were acting within the course and scope of your duties, we got you covered.
Mr. Mayor? Ross, in the example that you gave, I'm going to use that one specifically, of the union and that counselor speaking like as an individual counselor, but still got slammed for it. In that instance, are they covered under insurance?
That was just because of the specific nature of that case. It was a labor case. It was determined to be an unfair labor practice. So that was a city violation of the Unfair Labor Practices Act. There's no individual.
So that individual didn't get sued themselves?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I'm just going to cut it off there because I think that's a good place to end. And I've talked now for an hour. And you have a meeting to get to.
And obviously, there was a lot that you haven't covered, so I'll coordinate with you, and we'll find a good time for a future work session for you to continue this conversation.
That would be great.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Thanks, everyone. Great to
Thanks,
see you.
Ross.
Thanks, Ross. I'll take a 5-minute recess, obviously. If you
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. For those of you that are looking at the agenda, it showed the Webelos of Boy Scout Troop 7050. We're going to do the pledge and the flag ceremony. They are unfortunately ill tonight, so that will move to next council meeting. And so we'll start off with the announcements, additions to the agenda. Anybody? Declaration of ex parte contacts, conflict of interest, bias, etc.
Sorry, Mayor.
I got it.
May I propose an add
I
to
got it.
the? You got it?
Yep, sure
Okay.
do. So thanks, Julia, for reminding me. What I'd like to propose is that we add under the announcements a swearing in of the new council member after item 4 when we get to it, if the council's okay with that.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd say we're fine with that, unless anybody else has any objections to that agenda modification.
Nope, agreed.
Okay, everyone's good with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go to declaration of ex parte contacts, conflict of interest, bias, etc. I don't hear anything. Good. All right, so that leaves us with the appointments. So resolution number 1054, appointment of council vacancy. And since Alyssa's not here, I'll turn it over to Julia.
In your packet is a resolution. It actually was blank in your original packet, and I believe we updated the agenda to put Stephen Sims in at the mayor's request. And so if you so choose, we would respectfully request that you move to approve Resolution 1054.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
I move that we approve resolution number 1054.
Second.
It's been a motion and a second to approve resolution number 1054, the appointment of Stephen Sims to fill a vacant council seat. Is there any discussion? Councilor Ort?
I was just going to say we're excited to have you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Julie?
I'd also just add, we're very excited to have Stephen join us. I think I've really enjoyed just his commitment and just coming and participating in the process these last few months. I think he's been a fantastic voice in the public, and I think he's going to be an amazing addition to what we have here.
Thank you, Councilor. And I just want to reiterate again for all the folks that put their name in for this, it was a very difficult decision for me. Very many qualified candidates. I think at the end of the day, for me, it's Stephen's participation thus far. He's on the Parks Board, as you guys know. He's been at the council meetings. He put himself out there when it came to the last round of election in November. So with that, I have a lot of confidence in Stephen's ability to come up here and blend right in with us and have a good impact on the community. So with that, I will ask for council decision. So there's been a motion and a second to appoint Stephen Sims to be the new councilor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Sims, would you walk up here, please?
And I will do the swearing in. This is my first time, so be nice.
Awesome. You can just, yeah.
I'm sorry, I went the wrong way.
It's all right. You can actually stand by your designated seat if you want. It's up to you. Can you grab this? We're going to let Councilor Ort do the photography tonight.
Okay, so this is actually the oath, and once we'll sign this, I'll give this to you more officially. But so repeat after me. I, Stephen Sims,
I, Stephen Sims,
swear to support and uphold the Constitution
swear to support and uphold the Constitution
and laws of the United States of America,
and laws of the United States of America,
the state of Oregon,
the state of Oregon,
Stayton City Charter,
state and city charter,
and general ordinances of the city of Stayton,
general ordinances of the city of Stayton,
and to faithfully perform
and to faithfully
the
perform
duties of the office
and the duties of the office
of counselor for the city of Stayton, so help me God.
for counselor for the city of Stayton, so help me God. Thank you.
And he gets thrown to the wolves tonight, so you're the first up. You can assume that seat there, sir, and you'll be good to go.
I told him he had a monologue that he was going to be expected.
Did he? That's awesome. And that leads us to public comment. Is there any public comment? I didn't receive anyone, I don't think. But is there an opportunity for anyone to walk forward and talk about what's on your mind? No? Okay. That leaves us with the consent agenda. of February 6th, and the resolution number 1055 approving a new OLCC liquor license for La Sabrosa Taqueria.
Mr. Mayor, this is Counselor Patty again.
Counselor Patty.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented and approve resolution number 1055.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as submitted and approve resolution number 1055, approving a new OLCC liquor license for La Sabrosa Taqueria. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Giglio.
I just love La Sabrosa. They're fantastic. Fantastic addition to our community, and they have amazing burritos, and they're just phenomenal. So I'm excited. I'm excited for their interior to be opened, and this place we can have some liquor.
Awesome, I concur with you. With that, all those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries 5-0. That leaves us with the presentations. Julia?
So tonight's community partner is Santiam Senior Center, and I believe we have Polly Greaves here, the president of the Senior Center, to come and share with you what they do. My understanding is they're not quite in the city of Stayton, but they serve the city of Stayton. So Polly, if you want to come up and share a little bit about who you are and what you do for the community, that would be wonderful.
This will get me in trouble. Hi, my name is Polly Greaves, and I am my second year as president of Santiam Seniors. When I was voted,
Is your
in this
light
pos-
on, Polly? I'm sorry.
The green light is on. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I was voted in this position a year ago. I'm coming up on the end of my 2 years. We do 2 years at a time. I originally said, oh, no. You know, I like being the activities director and, anyway. It's been a learning experience at my age. It's been fun. The senior center is for, seniors, 50 and older. We are an organization. It's a club for kids over 50. There are a lot of seniors out there that sit at home. They're shut-ins. They have family members that don't give a rip about them, or they're just lonely. They've lost a loved one or child, whatever. We're there to bring them to us, to open them, to basically, I think, give them life. That it opens up. We got a lot of activities as seniors. We have a lot of laughter down there. We do bingo, we do pinochle, cribbage, quilting, line dancing, tai chi. We have a gift shop that's open just for members, which if you're interested or have a family member 50 or older and they're bored, you're shaking your head. It's $20.
Ineligible, sorry.
Okay, so, and we're run on donations. It's how we survive. We rely on the supports and our sponsorship of the community, which there are a lot of people in the community that support us. So, and of course, that our members pay their dues once a year. That's not once a month, that's once a year, $20 once a year. We are able to, we're just able to help them learn how to communicate. People come down there, and I learned this when I first went there. I was like, oh, wow. You'll hear one of the members, when I first started, there was 3 members I was sitting next to. I did not know them. They were talking about their adult children. And I'm like, my. I was really surprised, And before I knew it, I was able to share my story with my adult child. And so it's a support system also. It's a very strong support system. And we're just there to help each other. We do not like to see the seniors sit at home. We do not like to see seniors talked to. I'm a real strong person. I absolutely hate, and I don't like the word hate, I don't like the tone of voice people use to elderly people. I just don't like that. I think that's wrong, you know? And I have a tendency to tell people, don't talk to them like that. That's not nice, you know? We just try to support. We've lost a few members. We just lost a member that moved to Alaska with her family because of her dementia. And, you know, she was a very dear friend of mine. I try to tell people down there, we try to show respect, you know, and the courtesy thing. That's my big goal, respect and, you know, patience. Patience is the big thing, because I had to let them know, you know, hey, there's not a person in this room that doesn't have some physical problem. Hearing, arthritis, had cancer. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor myself. And we just have to be patient with each other. But my goal is to support the seniors of this community. And that's what our senior center is all about. Yes, we are in Lynn County. We're just across the river. But most of our the majority of our members all live in Marion County. We have people from Scioto and Jefferson and up the canyon that come. So, yeah, that's what we're about. We're about elderly people, seniors, having a good time. That's what it's all about. People ask me, what do I like about being a senior? You know my son. I absolutely love to embarrass my adult children in public. I think that's fun. That's one of my happy things, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you, Polly. Hey, Polly, what hours are you guys operating over there?
Our operating hours are Monday through Friday, 10 to 4. We play bingo on Mondays and Thursdays
Okay.
at 1 o'clock. We have potlucks out there, you know, lots of dessert. Man, them women can cook. And we're getting ready to do a St. Patrick's thing, kind of a, everybody makes something that's green,
Right.
you know. That's going to be interesting. Yeah, and like I said, they have line dancing, they have the Tai Chi.
Okay.
So it's just all
Awesome.
about fun, all
Yeah.
about laughing.
Awesome.
And if anybody plays hand and foot, come on down.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Polly?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, David.
Polly, about how many people do you average, like during a week, or how many seniors about?
We have active members, which those are the members that are current in their dues, about 200.
Wow.
We have overall that have joined seniors about 450 to 500. You know, so it is quite interesting. I'm proud to say that one of the members came up to me the December before I took office, and I was in Safeway, and she's, congratulations. I'm going, well, for what? I'm very nonchalant about stuff like that. And she says, for becoming president. I said, oh, that's not till January. Well, she quit coming for about 6 months. And she was with another friend, and they came in and hadn't seen her for a while. And I said, why'd you guys come back? What made you come back? And I'm proud to say, they said it was me. They wanted to see what I was going to do. I said, I don't want to change anything. The only thing I saw that was slacking at the time, and I guess it goes in spurts, was the lack of respect they were losing down there. And it was really sad for people our age and the patience. And I said, that's all I want to see. I want to see more respect and more patience. And it's come back. It's come back. And it's great. You know, it's great. And the people down there who are kind of negative, which old people all like that, they've all kind of really jumped up on the positive wagon. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you do. And one of the wonderful things about like serving in a community like this is it's always great to like meet people that know you when you were like a little kid. So, and you're like, oh man, this person remembers when I was in preschool. Yeah. So just thank you for everything, and you're such a joy in this community, and you're always just lighting every room you go into up. And so it's such an amazing thing that you're doing at the senior center, and I can tell like it's you, right, that's really just being able to, I mean, you're such a positive person, everything you do, and so I'm so thankful for the work that you're doing in this community, because it's really, that's the heartbeat of this community, is people like you who are stepping out and just being a joy and being a light, letting people know they're loved, and that's what's important. So thank you so
The
much.
worst thing a person can tell someone my age is stay out of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Really? But yeah, we tell them, that ain't gonna happen.
That's right.
Thank you, I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Julia?
So Polly, I have a question just sort of for the senior center. I know I see you at the Chamber Business Networking meetings on occasion, so I know that you're out and about in other parts of the community, but I'm curious kind of how the senior center coordinates or integrates with like those other resources like Meals on Wheels or the food bank or other things, and if there's things that I can be doing to support you.
We do have, we have our donations that we give to the food bank also. Since I've been on the board, and I've been on the board since 2006 at seniors, starting out as a member at large, I got involved in the SIT team. Getting involved in the SIT team and greeters, I was able to get, it was helped me help the seniors, because I found all these organizations where seniors needed help and they didn't know where to go. And at one time, before I joined seniors, I worked at the Resource Center with Rosa Ramirez. And through Rosa Ramirez, I got a wealth of information, names, phone numbers, and I've been able to pass that on to the members that are looking for that help. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to turn to. They have no information. And they've been saying, well, they keep telling me no. And I say, don't, this is who you want to call. If this is not the person, this person will lead you here. And I give them this information. So by me networking at greeters, and through the service integration team, I personally have been able to help a lot of the seniors. So, and I do get a lot of phone calls, so I whip out my phone numbers, and but I'm very proud to say I've been very, very lucky to be able to help those people. So.
Thank you. Councilor Orr, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. How is the senior center promoted? Like how do people find out about your activities and events that you have?
They started back in 2006 or 10, I think, somewhere back then. Started out in a church out by Circle K, I think it was. Then they moved to the fire hall in town, and then they were able to get the building that we share with Moonlight Maintenance on Kingston Jordan Road, which is where, since I've joined, it's been. A lot of it is word of mouth.
Okay.
I did do an article for our town last year. It was called Back on Track. And that actually, we got about 15 members just from that. I was pretty proud of that, So, yeah. So, and it was all, and that's what it was. Everybody was shut down and nobody could do anything. But then we opened up and people started, trickling in. And next thing you know, we had new people. When a new person comes into the seniors and they've never been there, they want to know, hey, what's this all about? Who's ever on the floor that day, which is a board member, because we take turns opening every day, the board members do. And who's ever on the board on the floor that day, they will take that person, you'll come in and they'll say, well, come on, I'll take you on a tour. And they walk you through it. The gift shop where we play cards and bingo, the library, we have a library down there, and you take books out and read them, or, this is our kitchen where we can't cook, but we can warm up foods and stuff like that. Go around, here's the Bibles. We do have a one-on-one computer class person. And the quilting's here, there's the pool table, and back there is where they do the dancing and Tai Chi. And then we have twice a year, we do what they call a general meeting, which is all members, come. And then if they have any questions or complaints or whatever it may be, we address them all.
Okay.
So, yeah, but it's pretty much all word of mouth. And that's, and that's why I got a kick out of Ed Deal when I first met him. And I gave him a card. And I says, you might want to come see us. And he says, I don't think I'm old enough. Well, he read the card. And it said a club for over 50. Kids over 50. And he goes, ooh, I think I'm old enough. And him and his wife joined the next day. So, it just happens.
Awesome.
It just happens. So, but it is basically, we don't advertise. I'll take that back. We do have a little ad in the new magazine that came out, the little magazine that came out. We have a little thing in there for the Santiam seniors. And there is our schedule of what we do in the Art Town paper. So,
Awesome.
other than that, it's mainly just word of mouth. And we just get people just curious. So, what is this?
Well,
Next thing we know, they've joined.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, great job, and thank you for giving us a thorough overview of what you guys are doing out there. So
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Polly.
Okay, that takes us to general business, and that's appointment of council liaisons, and we'll turn it over to Julia.
Sorry, I just got sidetracked mentally for a second. So this is a continuation of a discussion that we had at the last meeting. We presented sort of past practices as well as a list of as many different board, commission, committee meetings that we were aware of sort of routinely are occurring that a council member might be appropriate to be appointed to. And actually, it's very timely, the conversation that we had in the work session and the appointed authority. At the last meeting, council discussed that maybe this is too big of a list to specifically appoint people to attend all of these meetings, but perhaps picking some of the lower hanging fruit in terms of significant importance to the local community. I didn't hear anything back from any specific counselors, but just wanted to make sure that we have time on the agenda to discuss this. And once I get direction on kind of where you want to go, I'll prepare a resolution for a future council meeting for you to formally appoint members to represent whichever committees you choose to appoint council liaisons to.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ort.
did we talk about, is the expectation that if you are appointed to one of these boards, or if you decide to be on one of these, that you have to go every meeting, or how often is attendance? What's the expectation of? I don't think we talked about
No.
that or discussed it.
Yeah, I don't recall that. I would just say, well, I'll let you guys decide what you want to do. Make an effort. I don't know. That's okay with me,
Okay.
just as much as you can. You are all busy and
Sure. So if it's like a quarterly type of thing, and then the expectation is to kind of keep tabs on it and bring back information, updates, highlights, and things. I think last
Mr.
time
Mayor.
I was just, I'm sorry, Counselor Patty. I think last time I was just a little overwhelmed or confused. It was a little too broad for me to say, well, go when you want. And I don't think it needs to be rigid either. I just want a little bit more, I don't know, what are we all thinking is an expectation?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty?
Yeah, if I may, while I was going over this, I was kind of thinking that maybe these individual lined out commissions, boards, and committees, we could each have a designation for something that we would be attending. And just plan on going to that. And then these additional potential liaison assignments, I was thinking that we could kind of each take on whatever we could or felt like we could, and then attend as we could, and then report back. That's kind of how I envisioned it when I was going through the materials for tonight's meeting. I'm hoping to hear if there's any other better ideas that anybody else had, but that kind of sounded like the best way to go forward on this and conquer.
Yeah, I like that idea. I honestly, I will take obviously the mayor ones, but whatever else you guys want to do. Or does the rest of the council have an opinion?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
is this something maybe we could send emails to Julia and volunteer for a couple of these boards or committees?
Yeah, I think that's what she's looking for, right?
Yeah, ultimately, I'm going to prepare a resolution where you would formally be designating who the liaisons would be to certain boards and commissions. So having some discussion and consensus so that I don't have 5 people that then are vying for the same spot would be helpful.
Yep.
I will say, just sort of to the expectations, I think it would be helpful for that to be outlined maybe in the resolution of kind of, here's the purpose. I know that may have changed over time. My experience is that the liaison is kind of sharing what's happening at council and then sharing back from council what's happening on the different boards and commissions, not necessarily actively participating in the conversation of those boards and commissions. And I think just making that really clear, in that, in that resolution so that everybody understands what their role is and purpose as a liaison would be helpful. But I definitely want to hear if you have different thoughts on that. And then identifying kind of what the expectation is for to try to attend those on a regular basis, or, I think as available might be a little vague, but saying like if you're going to, attend regularly, knowing that there might be times where you can't, at least then that gives you the opportunity to communicate with the staff to say, hey, here's some things that we want to make sure you're sharing about council, or report back to me what's happening, or something like that.
So do we tell you right now, or?
Well, ultimately, I mean, that would be helpful
Okay.
if we can get there, but
Okay.
if we're still not there, we can bring this up again. But, ultimately, we're going to need to have names.
You guys want to do it that way? I'm going to start off top or however you want.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll put myself out there. I'll have some interest in the parks board, so I'll
There you
volunteer
go.
for that.
Does Counselor Sims, does he have to step away from the Parks Board?
Yes, he does, actually.
Oh.
Probably send in some sort of letter.
Resign as both.
We'll make sure that
Lance,
gets,
are you listening?
yep.
I believe he is here virtually.
I'm sure that'll fall under other business from the council tonight, or mayor maybe.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, we're not accepting Mr. Sims resigning, so he's going to have to come anyway, but we'll take Ben as well. You both can come. We'll have a great time. As usual, right, Councilor Sims?
Yes.
All right, that goes on. Let's start at the top then. Anybody for planning commission? All right, Mr. Sims, thank you. Councilor Sims. How about library board?
I'll do the library board.
Councilor Orr, thank you. The budget committee, I think we're all going to be part of that, so we can strike that one. And the next one down, I'll stay on that one. Sewer committee, I'll stay on the regional transportation deal. Public arts. This one hasn't even met yet, have they? So this one's the one that everyone should be begging for. We don't have to fill them all, I guess, right?
If no one else is going to do that one, I will absolutely take charge and do that one.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that, although I don't feel like I have a real appreciation of art. That's just my own personal opinion about myself. So if anybody else is wanting to take that one from me, I'm not going to fight you for it.
Okay. Julie, I think the next one I want to talk to you about, based on our ongoing current events. So maybe we can leave that one off.
Yeah, and that one, that's absolutely fine to talk about it. According to the MOU, my understanding is that it does spell out that it needs to be somebody that has delegated the authority
Yep.
to attend.
Yep.
And I believe it's the mayor and a counselor, I
Yeah,
believe.
that's right. That's
So
my
we'll, that may be something that we come back separately on.
Yeah, I think we should come back to that one. The public safety one, I think we should come back to. I know that the chief's working on that too, so we'll come back to that one. This other one has me a little curious, only because of our current committee with the homelessness. So maybe we table that for now, since there's not a group of folks with it, right? Is there a group of folks currently assigned to that, like in the community?
I do not believe so.
I thought there wasn't one of,
There was.
like on the last appointment, there's something.
Yeah, but I think that everybody's term that was appointed
Okay.
has expired.
Okay, so let's have that one be on hold now in light of the homelessness committee. And what does that leave us with?
And then we already have the
Yep,
appointees for the
good.
homeless task
Okay.
force.
Anybody else have any desire or any input or anything else? We get everybody? You good? You have enough information there?
Do you want to do the other ones?
I think those other ones, that's a lot of work. I don't know.
I was just gonna say that I was already planning on going to some RDS.
Okay.
Like board meetings. And so I would be willing to take that one on.
Okay.
And then also, I have a Realtor friend who is on the board of the Mid-Willamette Valley Association of Realtors, and
Okay.
she had reached out to me and asked if I could help her with monthly updates for
Okay.
Stayton, just to, so it can kind of be a back and forth type of thing on,
Okay,
you
that's
know,
awesome.
what they're doing and give them information about what's happening in Stayton as well.
Okay, that's great.
We were also talking about maybe doing a, like Santiam Canyon, Mayor, kind of
Yeah.
table.
Yeah, that'd be
round
awesome. Julie and I have had a conversation about that, actually, and we can fill counsel in on that as we pull it together a little bit more. So, I think, I will tell you, folks, that I'll do the Santiam Hospital Board, since I'm supposed to have scheduled meetings with Maggie as it is, so I don't mind doing that.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
I'm planning on semi-regularly attending the Government Affairs Committee for the Chamber
Okay,
as well, and I think I can keep pretty good tabs on the Chamber Board as well.
sounds good. Put you down.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to tackle the school board in addition to the Arts Commission.
Wow, okay, thanks. That's a lot. Let's not bite off too much. Let's
As
not
long as the
overcommit.
expectation is not to go to every single.
We'll make sure
meeting.
Julia doesn't list it out that way. Anybody else have anything else before we move on to the next deal? I think this is pretty good work so far.
Super helpful.
Yeah. Is that enough for now, or you want to come leave it the way it is and come back later, or just?
Mr. Mayor, I am not volunteering myself for this because I'm not. I think the only other one that I see as being important, like really important, I think they're all very vitally important. I don't want to say that. They're all very important. But, I mean, there's two Marion County related ones. There's the Marion County Public Safety Coordinating Council, and there's Marion County. That one, I don't know exactly what would be required there, but I think if there's someone who's able to have some sort of liaison presence with the county, I think that might be
No,
advisable.
That's a good point, Counselor. I think that Julie and I are having a discussion or a meeting with them on Thursday. Let me try to find out a little bit more about the scope of what that representation would be, but I don't mind putting my name on that one at all, so, to start with.
Mr. Mayor, I got one question.
Go ahead, Councilor McDonald.
What is the Santiam Communication Council?
I was wondering that too.
It's a great question, and I think I know what it is, but I'm not positive, because I used to be part of it, if that's what it is, if it still is. But that was at the time the 9/11 dispatch center was by the fire department, and it was a collaborative. I think Dan can probably speak a little bit. No, you can't? Or am I wrong, totally wrong? Chief? Chief wasn't here, so she won't know either. But that's what it was, in my recollection. We had all the people that paid in to use the communication center at the time. There was different districts, other PDs, other emergency response folks that did that. And there was a group of folks that met just to talk about the planning of it, the use of it, the fees, the whole 9 yards. And that since has been changed when it moved to Woodburn. So I don't think it's even in existence anymore.
So that can come off the list?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I should note that I compiled this list from a prior sort of more grouped list. And so I didn't know what that was, but it was on the list. So
I'm pretty sure that's what it was. I went to a couple meetings and that was it. Is that enough direction? Good?
Yes,
All right. Thanks,
thank you.
everybody, for that. That's awesome. You know what? I didn't even have public comment on there. Sorry. An opportunity for public comment. Anybody? Nope. I don't think we have to have a council discussion since we already did it. So we're good. Let's move on to hospital parking options. Julia.
So this is also a continuation of a discussion that we had last week. We presented information that we shared and received on the different options and solutions that we had identified for parking issues around the hospital. Council asked for a little bit more consolidated table of comments received, so that's what is included in your packet, as well as what I heard to be additional council comments and considerations. And really the focus is on, I believe, the parking on Pine, on the south side of Pine. I did not write this well. Parking on Pine, east of 10th, but it's on the south side. Council was discussing whether or not to leave it as staff recommended for not installing signage and give it some time to kind of see how everything played out, about 6 months, or whether or not to install some signage that says residential only or no hospital parking on the south side. Councilor McDonald also asked for information about the cost of building the street out to the full width. I don't know if we have that number yet. When I put this packet together, I didn't, and I honestly didn't check with Lance today, so I'm going to put him on the spot to see if he has a ballpark number for what that would cost if we were just to do basically street improvements on the north side of Pine to build that street out. Lance, do you have that number? I'm sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, I don't, Julia.
Okay.
That was easy.
That is easy. But if that is something that we want before.
You and I had discussed that, and I just did not have time to do it. And got caught up in some other things called the water line out on East Santiam. So,
Okay.
My time's been spoken for most of the week.
So if that is something that council really wants before you move forward with a decision or direction, then we can come back on that. There was also a bit of discussion on speed study on 10th, as well as for and exploring lowering the speeds. Lance also was having some initial conversations with Kittleson and Associates about what that would take, and there might be some different options that need to be explored, and I'm not sure, Lance, if you had a chance to explore all those options that we discussed or not.
I have not spoken to Kittleson regarding the regulatory versus the statutory, but from what I gather in reading the information, obviously the statutory is based on different zones and the regulatory are speeds over or under those statutory speeds. And most of those require a study. And I did find out it would take between 5,000 and 10,000 per street to do the study. So if you wanted to reduce the speed on Pine Street, it would cost between $5,000 and $10,000 for the engineering study. And then if you wanted to, on 10th Avenue, $5,000 to $10,000. And then if you were on Fir and Pine and wanted to reduce that from 25 to 20, it'd be the same price, but there may be avenues to reduce that by 5 miles an hour without the study, and I'm still exploring that. But for sure on 10th Avenue, it would cost between 5,000 and 10,000. All the studies that we were referring to or we were talking about, I was told would cost between $5,000 and $10,000 each.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Lance, and that would include whether we're wanting to just go to the statutory speed, because I know the residential statutory speed is 25 and business is 20. Does that, and you were saying that you were still looking into it as well, so it's all right if you don't necessarily have a firm answer on this, but is a speed study required when reverting back to a statutory speed?
What street were you referring to as being statutory? I think right now Pine Street and Fir is 25, which is statutory, because that's residential zone. But if you consider that a business zone, that's a different issue altogether, if that's what you're referring to, Councilor.
Yes, Lance, I would be referring to 10th Street. If 10th Street was in that residential zone and you wanted to revert to the statutory residential for that.
I would have to look further into that. What I was told, it would be 5,000 to 10,000 a study. And if you look at the differences between statutory and regulatory, I'm not sure who established the 30-mile-an-hour speed, to be quite honest. They may have already done a study to establish that 30-mile-an-hour speed. I don't know. I haven't checked in with Marion County at all. But I'm still exploring that. I started diving into it a little bit more today, and then I got called off from it. So still looking at it as far as that goes. But if we do have a study, have to perform studies, it's important that you know I did get estimates on that, and it would be $5,000 to $10,000 for each study for each road.
So obviously, there's still some information that we need to gather for the 10th Street speeding potential, reducing the speed, and for if we go in that direction. I contemplated pushing this whole conversation off to a future meeting and chose not to, hoping that we might have the information, but knowing we might not have all the information. What I would recommend or hope that we can get is direction on or general consensus on the signage proposals, with the understanding that we're going to continue having conversations about 10th Avenue and whether or not we do a speed study, when we do it, how we do it, that kind of stuff, and give us time to get more information rather than waiting. I mean, we certainly can also wait on everything until we have all that information, but I think that's just going to take a little bit more time, and I think these other things are a little bit more straightforward.
I would agree with that. Just remember that we had our first meeting with the hospital and the folks around there, September-ish?
October, yeah.
So.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question about this?
Councilor Sims, go ahead.
Thank you. I attended some of the earlier meetings, and something that I never saw discussed or on any of these lists, or most places have an indoctrination period when new employees come on board. And I would think it would be very helpful if, we worked with the hospital supervisors to get that into their indoctrination on, where they can park. Do they park down on that big lot on East Santiam and 10th Street, which I would, it's usually pretty empty because I drive by there 10 times a day. I live down there. So that would seem like a logical solution to a lot of these issues, is working with the hospital and, putting it forward where they can park and where they can't. I mean, you can't legally do that, but
So that would
It does
seem like
carry a lot of weight, though.
So that would seem like a logical solution. My understanding is the hospital does do that and still has problems with their staff not parking there. And so that's kind of why we're working with the hospital to try to identify, like, if we can have some hospital signage or residential-only signage, as it will hopefully push them where the hospital wants them to be parking. Not to say that that can't still be improved, but it sounds like people don't like to walk up the hill and choose to walk up a different hill.
The hospital administrator made it perfectly clear in our public meeting that she really pushes that message and tries to get the folks to adhere to that. And I think that's part of the reason why she's reaching out to the city, is because it's obviously not getting as much attention as it should be.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Petty.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to Councilor Sims' point real quick, I think they instituted the parking policy in July of last year, if I'm remembering correctly. So part of this is it's a new policy that they're communicating to staff. So I estimate maybe there could be some growing pains with that. And then the other thing I just want to go back to staff with on this is on point 1 and point 5 of the memorandum from you, Julia. We discussed this potential in 6 months to consider whether installing residential only or no hospital parking signage being warranted. And then again, we're talking over here in Mountain Estates about installing that. And I will renew my concern on this one, just stating that if we don't install it one place and do install it in another, I feel like by not saying anything or directing folks who would potentially park in those places there. So if we are going to go ahead and install it at Mountain Estates, I would just put forward to the council, we should probably consider also doing that on the south side of Pine as well.
I have more of a comment than question.
Councilor, go ahead.
Do you want to wait till discussion?
Yeah, go ahead.
No? Okay. I agree with Councilor Patty. In the meeting that we had at the hospital, several residents who live on Pine Street indicated that they do use the street as parking in front of their house, and while that is not their own parking, once we designate these other places as no parking, then, and if we don't put that there, I can see that being an issue, because people will start parking there, and then the people who live there are going to have an issue. Again, not that that's their own parking spot, but they do regularly use that right in front of their house.
Are there thoughts on, is there a preference towards residential only, which is what the hospital prefers, or no hospital parking, which is kind of, and the reason why staff has pushed that is that it just makes it really clear so that everybody in the entire city doesn't come to us and say, hey, can we have residential only parking here too? So that's, it just sort of helps prevent a precedent. The hospital has indicated they feel that sounds a little negative. And so is there a strong feeling one way or the other? I'm fairly neutral, but I just want to kind of present that and get thoughts from council on strong feeling one way or the other.
I always like to have a positive message, but I see your point of setting a precedent of putting residential only parking in places. And the problem is specifically the hospital. Mm-hmm. So while I don't really care for the negative language, I think that's probably, based on what you said, that's where I would lean.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
So instead of no hospital parking, how about no hospital staff parking? Is that kind of soften the language for the hospital?
I don't know if that
Okay.
would make a difference.
Okay. I want to maintain relationships with community partners here, and so I definitely have a mind of that, and I hear what you're saying about setting this precedent. So I just think that if there is a way that we could soften that language, I'm open to it individually.
And I guess if I get a general consensus on signage on the south side or no signage, but we could finesse what the signage says, I suppose, so that everybody's happy.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
So So just for, in the interest of clarity, so 2 weeks ago, we did receive testimony from Chief Johns that it wouldn't make any difference in terms of the enforcement of it. But what we're considering now is just setting a precedent so that we wouldn't necessarily have other people asking across the town, can I get no residential parking here?
Or residential only parking.
Or residential only parking. Yeah. So yeah, not no residential. Yeah. Residential only parking. Yeah. Okay. Just so I'm having in my mind exactly what's being considered.
Councilor Sims.
Mr. Mayor, I would definitely put the signs on both sides of Pine Street because it's in human nature. They are obviously, they're going to stop parking where it says no parking. They're going to park on the other side. So this problem will just continue, I do believe. And as far as signage, I would definitely go with no residential, or residential parking only. He got me saying no. But I would definitely say residential parking only. I've lived in many cities all over the country, moving around, and everywhere I've been, it's always been residential parking only.
Good point. Good point.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
just as a more general point, and I don't mean this to be kind of like it's a comment that it's just opening it up for conversation just a little bit more. Like it's been in the back of my mind as I've looked through these recommendations that there is this possibility that it will still exacerbate the problem because we're removing so much parking. So it's one of those things that's a little tough because in some of these areas where it's in Fur Street, for example, removing that much parking on Fur feels like it's tough if these are if these aren't things that can actually be enforced. If we can't really enforce these signs, is there just the potential that some of these actions are just going to end up exacerbating the problem? And it's this, I'm not saying I have opinion one way or another. This is just mostly as I'm exploring it and trying to consider how we want to do it. I think action is required to a degree, but I'm just trying to kind of work through it, exactly what's going to end up creating the desired result.
So, and just a clarification, the no parking signs are enforceable and can be enforced and would be enforced. It's the residential only that's just really, as Chief Johns, mentioned last time, how do you prove it? How do you, it just makes it really challenging. But it's really clear if you're in a no parking zone, you're in a parking zone and you get a ticket. So that is enforceable. And then, not to say it won't exacerbate the problems, but the hospital has provided a spot for people to park. They're just choosing not to park there. And if it's truly exacerbated, that's really on the hospital to solve that problem, not on our street system to solve that problem.
Mr. Mayor?
Well, if I may, I would like to point out also the difference between the Pine Street parking and the Fur/Pine Street parking. On the Fur/Pine Street parking, there is a safety issue. And that's why we were posting that street. The Pine Street east of 10th, it's more of a neighborhood complaint.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I think I would be comfortable with these recommendations as long as we include, I think, the addition of the no residential,
I know what you mean. It's
the residential only signs for the south side, right? Yeah, for the south side of the street of Pine. I think that would be the caveat, and then continue discussion on speed limits for both on 10th and Fur. I would just also have the caveat similar to how we maybe had, 6 months or so to reconsider those residential or, residential only parking signs. I just think that whatever action we take, we do want to make sure that we are, in 6 months to 12 months, reviewing this topic again and really making sure that the desired result is taking place, and that if any modifications to what we are doing, are necessary. I understand that may end up costing us more money, but I do think that it's gonna. That would be where I'm leaning.
Is that enough direction or?
Yeah, so I think what I'm hearing and what I'm hearing is support for no parking signs on the north side of 10th, support for residential-only parking signs on the south side of 10th, or Pine, gosh, sorry. Support for no parking signs on the curve parts of Fir Street, support for installing residential-only signage on the entry into the Mountain View Estates. And then coming back in the near future to have conversations about speed, what it will take, what we can do with more information for you on reducing the speeds on 10th and Fir. So I think that's what I've heard. I'd like input, and maybe we just kind of, with the 10th, we also had the recommendations of the increased signage and the additional crossing, and I think that would be appropriate to kind of wait on that until we've had that whole conversation about what we do with everything else. If that is head nods direction, I'm hearing that correctly, what I would propose to do is send additional notice out to the people that we sent notice to before and say, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. Look for, and I'll coordinate with Lance to see what the time frame is to actually get this done, coordinate with the hospital because they did indicate they would chip in on the costs, and then let them know when that would happen, and then schedule a revisit for us in about 6 months. Obviously, if there are problems, we will hear about them. We will be able to have those conversations. Does that
Hey,
sound?
Julia,
Yes.
not to throw a wrench into it at all, and I really don't mean to, but until we find out what the costs are for reducing the speeds on Fir/Pine, we should probably hold off putting any kind of signage on that, because if we can go to 20 miles per hour, I don't think there is the safety condition as there is at 25.
Right.
So I would hold off on that road until we make darn sure we can't reduce that speed on our own.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting, is kind of delay the signage plans on that until we have the more robust conversation about what we're doing about speeds on 10th, but can move forward with the other signage.
Yeah, the primary complaint from everybody was parking, so I think
Right.
you're prudently addressing that issue
Miss-
to begin with.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify this last comment here from Lance. So what you were saying, though, just for clarity, so you were saying that you might hold off on the no parking signs on Fir. Is that what you're saying? Because if we reduced it down to 20, that might reduce some of the safety concerns? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the interior curves, if we take it down to 20 miles an hour, we don't need the full width. You can see through. And so if we can get to 20 miles an hour, then we may not need the signs on the interior curves, or they'd be drastically reduced.
And you'd have more parking.
Yeah.
So that's sorry, I didn't understand that wrench that you were throwing. That's a good, thank you, Counselor Giglio.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
I just want everybody to be clear and the timing to work out correctly. That's all.
Okay, so now I need to clarify this, Lance. So you're saying speed is not an issue, that it comes down to obstruction of parking? Or vice versa? You're saying that.
So when you're going down the hill on Fir and Pine, when you're heading westbound or coming up the hill,
right?
There's a speed limit of 25 miles an hour, and you need to have a certain vision. And you cannot see through parked cars at 25 miles an hour. The length of vision is like 140 something feet that you need to be able to see clear vision. At a reduced speed at 20, it reduces down to enough where you can see through. That's all I'm saying. We could provide more parking for them.
Okay. Not sure I agree with that, but okay.
Mr.
Well, it's, yeah, all right.
Counselor, go ahead.
So I guess my thoughts on that, and I'm verbally processing this right now, based on what Lance said, even, okay, if we drop the speed limit down and it is technically safe to then have the parking, I still think we're going to have
the same complaints from people, you're not gonna, it's,
I think the
You-
window is going to be smaller. The amount, so what Lance is saying is that based on the speeds, you have a certain line length, and if
Okay.
the speed is lower, you have a shorter line length. And so I think you're probably still going to have limited parking. It's just how much limited parking
Okay,
you
okay.
have.
okay. Then my question on that is, this is not directed at anyone in particular, but I'm kind of annoyed that we have to do a study and spend $5,000 to $10,000 to lower the speed. And is that something that we want to do? If we don't have, I mean, especially on 10th, like, do we want to spend that amount of money on that we could spend towards something else? If there isn't a huge concern of people speeding up and down that hill?
So I would recommend, I mean, you can certainly have that discussion now. I want to get more information and have Lance get more information on the process. If we have to do a study, that's what it will cost. The question is whether or not there are other avenues where maybe we don't have to do a study. And that's what needs to be explored a little bit more, and that's the regulatory versus design speed question.
Okay.
So I guess I would recommend putting a pin in that piece of the conversation, and then at a future meeting date, you guys can make a call on whether or not you want to spend the money to do a study, if we do have to do a study, or what you choose to do. I think that the question of fur, though, is a great one. If we want to delay signage on fur until we have that additional information and discussion, or we did hear questions and concerns about speeding on fur, but not nearly as much as we had on 10th. And so I just don't know what the feeling is on whether or not that was heard as a big enough issue and a big enough concern on fur to delay the signage and have the conversation about a study for fur, if you really just want to focus the attention on 10th.
Well, and, I mean, I'm sure they're cheaper, but signs aren't free,
Right.
right? They cost something to install, so still should probably weigh that in there as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're saying that for sure for fur, because fur would be at 25 already. So the statutory regulatory is not in play there. It's only potentially in play in the 10th Street discussion. So that's for sure, if we were going to explore that route for fur, we would need to consider a $5,000 to $10,000 a $5,000 to $10,000 study, which then we would need to comply with those results. Is that correct, Lance?
I would believe so, but I can't answer that definitively. Sorry.
Yeah, that's where
I can look
there's
into
the
it more, but it
delegated
sounds-
authority. There's a lot of things that have happened recently and some new law in terms of delegated authority too. And so, but my understanding is you still have to do some study in order to get that part done. And that's where we just need to get some more information.
Okay.
There was also an ORS that allowed for city council to be the regulatory agency where they could reduce residential streets from 25 to 20. But again, this is new. I need to dive into it before I can give you guys more information on that. And that's something that we'll be doing in the next couple of weeks at Julia's agenda.
And I think that started in Multnomah and Lane counties, and is it now statewide, or it sounds like you need more information, right? So,
Yeah.
anything else?
So I feel like I have pretty clear direction on Pine and pretty clear direction on Mountain. I'm not sure that I have clear direction on Fir. Wait or don't wait?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
What is it? The site distance from Pine and Fir onto 10th, that is a no-brainer, right?
I think it's a no-brainer in that it really wasn't warranted, but the hospital's doing something anyways on their property, so I
Okay.
think they're taking care of it. the sight distance, the wall issue.
Lowering the wall.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that, never mind.
They were in our office today getting a right-of-way permit, filling that out, so that is moving. He was looking at maybe going out the end of the week and starting on that project, so that's going full speed ahead.
But not too fast.
Not too, that, yes.
Sorry. The right speed.
Mr. May,
Go ahead.
I'm good with the waiting until we get that more information for the signage on fur, right? Is that what Lance was suggesting? Lance's suggestion. That's what I agree with.
I will, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Go ahead.
I will just say, I am a little concerned delaying the signage, at least on Fur, because again, same kind of problem I was bringing up with East Pine. I feel like there's going to be increased parking in that area due to the signage we are posting. So, I mean, maybe just, I don't know, verbalizing the concern. I don't know if that makes me want to not wait, but I just wanted to put forward that to the council for consideration before we move forward on this.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ort.
if we put the signs up on Fur and then we did the study and we found that we could shorten that area, Lance, is it possible to move the signs that we already have purchased? Because we are putting no parking there regardless. Is that correct?
Yeah, what's the old adage? You can do anything for money. So yeah, we could. It's about $300 a sign to put one in now. And so if we have to move them, you know, you're looking, it's just more money, Counselor, that's all. So, but yeah, we could.
So it would be staff time essentially in relocating the signs that we've already purchased.
Yeah.
Would we have to move both, or would we like put one in place and we like?
I don't know.
I guess that would have to, I'd have to look at it closer once we had it designed and we put them up.
I just, I hear Counselor Patty's concern on that waiting. I know, I'm sorry, I made a statement and then I'm going back on it, but I do see the concern there.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Giglio.
I think considering the feedback, like the public feedback, public comment on speeds, on the speed of those two roads and the desire to get something done, I would say like my priority on speed is 10th Street over those two streets. So I would be all right saying, okay, let's move forward on signage. Let's move forward on the things that we can agree on, and not delay this further. Just because even if we decide to say, hey, let's do a speed study on Fur, that's still going to be like we got to decide if we're going to do it, and then that's going to still push it out, you know, until the speed study can be done, and then we can get a recommendation based off that. So I don't know. I think. And I will say this, like I usually, you know, maybe do things a little quicker than than I should. So that's a little bit more my nature. Would be more leaning towards just kind of doing those things, and then revisiting for maybe in that 6-month discussion that we have is just to say how is this working? How are the safety concerns being handled based on these on this measure? Is there more that needs to be done? And then kind of going from there. So I think that's where I would lean, just so that way we can start to just kind of move on most of this, and then just consider exploring 10th at a later date.
I agree with that. That's actually my thoughts also. The speed study on First Street, I don't know how necessary that is to change it from 25 to 20 for that expensive a study, but the signage, I think, should be the priority.
Agreed.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Ort.
So my final thought on that is we're going to put the signs up anyway. It just depends on how far the distance is. And then I'd be curious to know like how many extra cars that would get by reducing the speed. I know you don't have that answer now, but that's kind of where if we're like, how much money does it cost to move them? How many more cars are you going to get there? That's
Actually, Counselor, I do have that information for you. The only information I have for you tonight.
Okay.
I think you would get 2 additional cars if we were to reduce the speed.
Wow.
Mr. Mayor,
I'm a no.
yeah, I just want to thank you for helping me make that decision, Lance.
There you go. We're good on that? All right, so
So signage, yes, speed, we'll come back with more information. We're not moving forward with a speed study. We'll
Right.
come forward with more
Correct.
information about process. We still can talk about for, at that time, if you so choose, but we won't wait on that for the signage.
I missed the opportunity for public comment, so I'm going to throw it out there one more
Sorry.
time. No public comment on this? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, you're embarrassing us in front of Ross.
Sorry, Ross.
I'm sure he's taking notes.
I'm sure. All right. With that, let's have an informational discussion. The review of current practices for dogs at large.
And just as Chief Johns comes up, and I don't know if she's going to make Dan come up as well, as a reminder, this came up months ago. Counselor Ort brought this up as discussion during her campaigning as an idea that wanted to be discussed. And so I've asked Chief Johns and Dan just to discuss kind of what we're doing, what we're seeing, not necessarily asking for direction on anything, but just to give you information. And then if you choose to do something more, we can have that conversation.
So just some history. My understanding is 10 to 13 years ago is when animal control was dissolved within the city. So went away from having an animal control person as part of the staff. ORS does require that animal control be handled by the county. And that is they've got infrastructure in place for shelter, processes and staff for licenses and fees. The way that we currently manage it in Stayton, I would look at as a partnership. So we handle things that are present a danger to the animals or to our public. And so from the standpoint of police doing public safety and enforcement, if there's a danger of an animal running in traffic, we're going to deal with that. We don't want to see an animal injured or traffic issues presented. If there's a dog at large that's aggressive with people or other animals, we will address that as well. If it's simply just there's a dog that's out that the owner hasn't managed to get a hold of yet, there's different ways that can be managed. We see a lot of public input. There's a Facebook page of the Lost and Found where people post the photos on Facebook and reconnect, I think, to a lot of success. The county also has a website where they post the lost and found dogs. So if someone was to find a dog, they can get that put up on their website as well as the Facebook page in the community. Also, the animal control in Marion County can manage that as well. So if we do get a dog at large call, they're aggressive, we're dealing with that. We've got a few different avenues. We do have a chip reader. And so it's so good as if a dog is chipped. But our main objective is to get that dog back to where it belongs and make sure that there's practices or safeguards that the owner is able to keep that dog contained and managed, and that it's not presenting future or continued public safety issues. So we'll look to see if we can chip it or get a reading on the chip and get it reunited. And then we do have access to animal control. So all our officers carry a little prox card that gets us access to animal control so that we can lodge the dog. It's not that far away, but we do try to avoid that for a few reasons. Takes us outside the city and for coverage and for priority calls. But also we understand, there's, it's been brought up, the fees that people have to pay to get the dog back. And I know there's different opinions on that. If someone's dog's out, should there be a penalty to get your dog back? So there's a lot of different things that go on with that. But we are not set up and don't have standards to being met to shelter dogs, to release dogs, to be checking paperwork for if they're up to date on shots and all that. So we defer to the county for that. I will say that we looked at our calls for service related to animals, and barring other types of calls, we handle cow calls, wild turkey calls, I think we've had llama calls, all sorts of different animal calls, raccoon calls. But dog calls, we've had 110 that we have handled, our Stayton officers in the last 12 months. Those can be anything from dispatch likes to give it to us as the hot dog call, and that's a dog in a car on a hot day. So we will deal with those, abuse, neglect, like I said, the aggressive dogs. So it covers a lot. In talking to Marion County Animal Control, they said that they believe they only manage about 4 to 5 calls in the state and city limits in a month. So they're not being called to come over here very frequently. So we end up managing most of the dog calls. And I mean, just part of that is, like, again, we're public safety and enforcement, so our dog calls do get prioritized to our other calls for service. So if we've got, in progress call that requires police, the dog call may wait and hold, but it's prioritized like our other calls for service are. And Dan was just here for moral support.
Thank you, Chief. With that, I'm not going to miss this one. Now's an opportunity for public comment. No public comments, so we'll go to council discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Council Ort.
Chief, did the county say they got 4 to 5 calls themselves? So is that just people aren't calling them, they're calling you instead? Or
So what that means is that they were here taking care of a dog call 4 to 5 times a month. So it could be that, that the public just called them directly.
Okay.
Or it could have been that they called dispatch and dispatch said, this is more appropriate, handled at county.
And a follow-up, Mr. Mayor? So they do come out to Stayton?
Yes.
If they're called, or certain calls that you know of? I know it's not.
Yeah. So they, for sure, for aggressive, and we will partner with them. So there's times where we actually will go out on a call, and it's something that's better managed through their resources, or we'll be able to contain the dog, and they'll be able to help us, transport it and secure the dog, depending on what the situation is. But yeah, they will respond out here.
Okay.
Councilor Patty.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chief. Thank you for giving us all this information. Some of this was new to me, and I thank you for bringing it to us. I do have a question. Actually, I have 2 questions. I'll start with my first. So are there ever requirements to, like, lodge an animal and then there's no space available with the county for them that you're aware of, or is that not occurring?
I'm not aware of that happening for us.
Okay. And then, so how often would you say we're prioritizing, like, other calls, like dispatches over, like, say, stray pets, loose pets, that kind of thing? I was just curious.
I mean, just based on the number that we receive, I mean, every day is different. And so we have other types of calls, not just dog calls, that may pend for a little bit based on a priority call. If we have an active disturbance, or I know one day we had 2 DUIs in custody at the same time. And so anything, that's not a life-saving call, we're going to prioritize in those circumstances. So.
Okay, thank you. One last thing, I just kind of curious, what are we going to do about these turkeys? I got attacked the other day in my van, and so, I mean, if they're going after vans at this point, I am a little concerned, Chief.
And they have chased our cop cars too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I know that we have worked with the Fish and Wildlife, so they've been looped into the problem solving.
That's great news. Thank you.
Just feed them.
Yes. Yes, that is understanding. And I know some, I've been told there's been some other areas where the population has gotten out of control. So yeah, it's a concern.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Counselor.
Counselor Patty, are you referring to like the four that like
Yes.
stroll around together?
Yes.
Oh, I love
They
those.
hang out in my front yard all day
I
long.
love those.
I swear. They're great. They're a lot of fun until they
they're not.
heckle your
Until they-
kids. and-
Not a lot of fun.
Okay. Chief, I actually did have a question. So the reason that I brought this up, and when I was talking to the gal who had this concern, she was saying that she used Independence as an example. And so I gather from what you were saying is that they probably have their own animal control there in Independence as opposed to just like having a partnership with the city.
They may. So I've seen different models. So I'm aware of other cities that also had animal control as part of the city. And then just as, it's a very unique position. It's a very unique person that wants to do only animal control. And so a lot of places, those were lifetime employees that retired, right? And so when they saw those employees hitting retirement age, they just kind of phased out those positions in some cities and then transferred to county as coverage. But I've seen where foundations have taken on animal shelter. So it's not city run, it's foundation.
Yeah. So that actually, thank you, kind of piggyback, I was thinking, is there another organization in town? I see this as kind of like when our DMV shut down, or when DMV shut down from smaller areas, that access to these things gets harder. So Marion County, the dog shelter isn't really that far away, but it is far away for some of our residents to access. And then, not to say that you wouldn't have fees either, but I'm just wondering if there was an organization in the canyon that we might be able to like partner with or something. I don't know.
Nothing jumps out to me as far as that. Obviously, if you're
That's not-
housing dogs, you got to feed them and water them, and
Yeah.
it's got to be appropriate shelter. Someone's got to go routinely check on them, right? And then the cleanup process as well.
That wasn't necessarily directed to you, but just kind of
Yeah.
a thought to the council.
And if I may, even back when Stayton had our own animal control officer, we did not have our own shelter or kennel.
Yeah.
When she picked up a dog and it needed to go to the kennel, it went to
Yep.
Marion County.
Yep.
So, we had our own city employee doing the work, but we didn't have our own facility.
And honestly, like I say, with the other options, and social media seems to solve a lot of the reunions of owners and dogs. I know I talked to the chief in Almsville today, and he said, yeah, social media goes crazy, and cute picture of Fluffy, and pretty soon someone's like, how'd my dog get out? I got, try to reconnect with them. So I think that is obviously a more friendly and happier approach to getting dogs and people matched up again.
Agreed. Thanks. All right, Julia. Communications from city staff.
Okay, let me see. So a couple of announcements. I just wanted to mention that the Lions Club went to Parks Board last week, the week before last, recently, and submitted an application to adopt Pioneer Park, and the Parks Board supported that, and I signed that. So the Lions Club is going to be working on cleaning up and helping us with that park, so that's exciting. And then, so I don't know if you knew this, but we have Adopt a Park program, standards, application form. I don't think it's been well publicized or known. So once I found out about that, I think that that's something that we can definitely push, because I think the more people that have ownership in those parks in the community, the better. So hopefully more to come on that. You may have heard that the congressionally directed spending sort of opened up from Senator Wyden and Merkley's office recently with a March 3rd deadline. Lance and I have been talking with Michael Skipper with CFM, our lobbyists, and we'll be putting forward 3 requests, one for Ida Street sewer upsizing, one for the roundabout, and then one for stormwater improvements in that industrial area as well. We've gotten actually pretty favorable that we think that certainly the Ida Street upsizing could be very competitive, but Michael thinks that the other projects could be competitive as well in different buckets. So we'll see. We certainly don't expect to get all of them, but hopefully if we get one, that would be fantastic. I will be working with our partners on getting letters of support on those. We need to have 3. One should come from council, so I'll be getting something to you in the near future on that as well. It might have to come outside of council, honestly, so I might send it like I did the other House bill letter and let you choose to sign on or not. And then speaking of letters, we're also looking at potentially submitting letters of support for some House bills at the state level, extending sunset for the enterprise zones, and then extending the site readiness program and allocating money to that. We think that program is important regardless, but if there's funding, that might be an angle for us to potentially get some funding or support for our industrial area as well. So those are my announcements.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Julia, is there any flexibility? How far along are you in the process of all of those 3 sites, like those 3 projects being the ones that are determined as the ones that we should be submitting funding for? Is that basically ship sailed, or is there any opportunity for discussion on those?
Ship hasn't sailed, but those are the ones that our lobbyists thinks are, well, one that staff thinks are really important and necessary, and are probably the most competitive for these congressional earmarks. Essentially, that's what the congressionally directed spending is for. There are some other projects that we will be seeking other funds for, just not for the congressional earmarks. One is the Safe Streets for All, to do some street improvements throughout town. But yeah, if there's thoughts that you have, I'd like to hear them.
I mean, for me, I just feel like I would prioritize, but I understand we're kind of thinking through this from strategically as like from their perspective in terms of what's going to be most competitive at what level. But for me, I would prioritize the Safe Street stuff, the ones, the downtown improvements over the roundabout, just because. From my perspective, I think it's just more important to fix what we have than to expand currently, just given what we have. And so, but I definitely understand, like, I think both our priorities, especially having just, something happened on that road. But that would be the one where, I mean, if it was up to me,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that's where my priorities would be.
So, and completely understood. I wholeheartedly understand that is the way probably the majority of the community feels. That is, and actually we spoke about that today. Competitively speaking, that's probably not a good candidate for congressional earmarks, because it's not doing the economic development, supporting housing, and really those are what the senators are going to be most influenced by. Safe Streets for All, absolutely. It's going to be providing pedestrian access, ADA accessibility, all sorts of things. So I think that it will be a potentially good candidate for that program, just not the earmarks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Julia? No? That goes to communication from the mayor and the council. I will start by saying thank you for putting the first homeless committee meeting together. That was pretty successful from the little bit of time I did spend there. I was encouraged by having Ross there and by having the outline presented, and the folks that were participating all seemed like they were appointed to the committee for a reason. And let's see how it works out going down the road. So I appreciate you doing that. The next meeting is what, the
March 13th.
March 13th. So I appreciate both counselors being on that committee. That I think it means a lot, and good stuff to look forward to coming in the future. There is a couple committee spots open on the budget committee, so I'd really like to see some folks from the community have an interest in looking at numbers and stepping forward to fill those. That's kind of a pressing issue for us. We're going to have May, right? It's the first meeting.
Sorry, yes, for the first budget committee
Right.
meeting, yes,
So
May.
anybody from the community that's interested in doing that, please reach out to the city and fit the application, send it over to us. We now have a vacancy on the Parks Board, maybe 2, right, Lance? I don't know. I think was there 1 or 2, Lance?
Yes, there's 2 available now that Councilor Sims has jumped off the side of the ship, as you would.
There you go. So anyone's interested in any of those positions, contact Tammy or anybody at the city, and we'll get an application out to you. That's all I got to start with. Anybody from council? No.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Hort.
I would like, you mentioned it earlier, but I would like to say thank you to all the people who put their name forward for the mayor, the council position, the mayor position too, all the positions. It's really exciting to see people come forward for the commissions and the boards that we have and help our community out. And I sat in on that meeting, the homelessness meeting as well, the task force, and I hate to say feel our pain, but also just understand our frustration. And a lot of times the public at large doesn't always understand the problems or the issues that we have to face in the decisions that we make. And so it is kind of nice to see a group of people come together to understand what those kind of problems might be, and then how they can help us move forward. It just maybe gives them a little bit more understanding of where we're coming from when we have to make the decisions that we make. So, but I thank everyone who is going to join the Parks and Rec Board as well, and the Budget Committee. So, thank you.
Awesome. Well, there's nothing else. Thanks everybody for joining today, and that concludes the meeting.